Hey there everybody, this is AdmiralNewkirk, and I'm going to be bringing you a game between NexSickness and VeraJaniceToth. Despite what this says in Korean, this is in fact VeraJaniceToth. If anyone knows Korean who watches this would like to translate it, that would be fine and dandy. NexSickness, for those of you who don't know, was a really great player in beta, sort of slumped since then, and this is the first replay I could find of him in quite a long time on Gosu Gamers. This is currently the highest rated replay on Gosu Gamers in the month of July, and I have not yet seen it. It's going to be on taldarim altar, and this map is a little bit odd in that these positions and these positions are kind of similar, but especially with siege units that Terran has, this area is dangerous. On cross positions, however, Protoss can wall you in with pylons. So this map is a strong macro map that has a few little tweaks to it, and really, the rush distance is not that quick for something like an MC style sentry heavy 4-gate. That's sort of hard to do on this map because the choke's so wide and because their rush distances are so long. But then again, as soon as you get warp gate, rush distances don't matter. We're going to be seeing NexSickness scouting in with his probe. Meanwhile, VeraJaniceToth, which I will have to remember because I don't get to see it up there, is scouting out with his Overlord. We haven't seen NexSickness put anything down but a pylon, and what I would expect is a Forge Fast expand on this map, because Forge Stacks and Expand kick ass on this map. We see VeraJaniceToth putting down a spawning pool, because that's what one does when it's Zerg, and we get to see the creepy little drone with the extended spine swim around in there in the pregnancy tube. Now we see Sickness moving out to place down a forge, and we see NexSickness most likely placing down a forge, or perhaps he'll go Nexus first. Very interesting. Nexus first is a little bit riskier, but if you expect your opponent won't be pressing you early, you should be pretty safe. So if your opponent isn't July, generally you're okay. And there goes down the forge, just a nice little tweak there to be as economically viable as possible. At the same time, we have not yet seen VeraJaniceToth put down an expansion, and that's why there's a big pylon right there in the middle. God, pylons are annoying. A cool thing that Protoss players can do versus Terran is, like, if somebody's about to wall off, put a pylon there or they're gonna wall off. It's so, like, it can allow you to complete a 2-gate Zealot Rush very easily. And we see a lot of Zerglings moving out for VeraJaniceToth. Is this cannon going to be finished in time? I don't know. This is reminding me of Huck at DreamHack, although that was a 6-pool. So now this one probe has a kill and is really just being incredibly annoying. I would have liked to see those Zerglings break down this pylon, but perhaps they're trying to exploit a timing issue. And ooh, a clutch pylon there by NexSickness, and a good cancel too. These Zerglings was a strong move. Counter, put a little bit of pressure on, and punish the Protoss for piloning up your Expo. We see that Sickness, God, this is gonna, I'm just gonna call them the Zerg. We see that the Protoss is keeping these cannons. We see the Protoss is also putting down a cybernetics core. Meanwhile, Zerg, oh my god, that's awesome. Just before the gateway finished, or just before the pylon finished, the Protoss put down a gateway. Oh, that's so cool. We see that this Overlord, however, is moving into a good position to scout. And if we look at the Units tab, we'll see that they are exactly even on workers. However, right now Zerg does have map control from the amazingness that is Zerglings. Finally, Zerg gets to put down his expansion. Meanwhile, Protoss is building cannons because cannons are pretty. He's wanting to decorate his main with some nicely spaced cannons, perhaps a forge, and then sort of a Mexican fiesta feel, he's throwing in a cybernetics core. Looks like we're going to be having some sort of cybernetics core party as soon as we get some gas. Meanwhile, back in the Zerg space, he has yet to get up his expansion, and the annoyance must be driving him mad. We see that the drones are currently oversaturated here. He would either need to get a second gas, which it appears that he's doing. He is, in fact, his drones are 1 oversaturated. You'll see that this guy can never quite find his right home. That's because you only need 24 drones to perfectly mine, or completely mine, an expansion. It's also better to have 2 drones than it is to have 3 drones, or more specifically, 2 drones is better than 1 drone, more so than 3 drones is better than 2 drones. So it's better to move 8 workers from your main into your natural, so that way you can get up to 2 drones as quickly as possible, and it's the highest amount of efficiency than it is to keep all 24 drones in your main and wait for your natural to saturate on its own. We see the queen now skipping inject larva for just a moment, and we see the queen's energy very low. That's generally a mark of a good player if his queen's energy is low. One thing I will say that sort of disappoints me about Blizzard with Zerg is how difficult it is to spread creep and keep up macro. They both require so much APM that it's just sort of disappointing. We see that the Zerg is throwing down a Roach Warren, and we see that the Protoss is apparently going Zealot Sentry. Right in the range of the Overlord, he's sort of doing a pseudo-hidden tech. This is a very fun and very smart thing to do as Protoss. Just like put a pylon at the edge of your base, or build on the low ground, and just build a gateway, or just build like pylons, or build a cannon. Don't hide anything, but make the Zerg freak out when he sees a hidden pylon. It's a great way to metagame someone. We see the Protoss putting down a Stargate. This is sort of the accepted thing to do once you Forge Fast Expanded, especially on this map, because a Forge Fast Expand is somewhat immobile. You've invested a lot in these cannons, and so therefore you want to invest as little in a ground army as possible for the first stage of the game. So what he does is he gets a couple of sentries, keeps these cannons, a zealot, and now he's going to be doing some Stargate play, because this is a very mobile, very non-ground based thing. That means the investment in the cannons wasn't wasted, because you're still using them for defense. It's this weird sunk cost thought experiment that's proven to be very successful in the Korean ladder. Let's see if he builds Phoenixes or a Void Ray, and it's Phoenixes! Fun stuff, folks. We get to see one of the most fun openings in the world. Great positioning there by the Zerglings. I thought they were going to come in for a flank, but it looks like they were just moving up to rally together. We see the Zerglings scouting around, and has the Zerg yet seen? No, the Zerg has not yet seen the Stargate. It appears that he fell for this juke completely. However, this Phoenix could go over and kill this, or he could simply wait and wait for the Zerg herp to scout it, and then kill the Overlord. It depends how quickly he wants to reveal these Phoenixes. Twilight Council is out. I expect Blink to be researched as soon as possible. It looks like the Overlord has now seen the Stargate, but he doesn't know what's being produced out of it. Let's see how the Zerg responds. He puts down a Spore Crawler instantly in his base. Very, very strong. Only one Spore Crawler so far. We also see a Hydralisk Den coming down. This is an interesting play, and something that's fairly popular, especially in late beta, was like to go Phoenixes to force Hydras to then go Colossi. And it was super annoying. Oh, a clutch contamination right there. Looks like we're going to be seeing the 2 Phoenix Void Ray push that is so frustrating to deal with. Meanwhile, Protoss is gearing up to take his third. Zerg has already taken his third down here in sort of a hidden location. He also has a Spore Crawler there, and he should be injecting larvae fairly regularly, but he's moving out with these cloaked roaches, burrowed roaches. Also, did you guys know that EMP doesn't actually reveal burrowed units? Food for thought. We see Hydra range going down. We also see +1 Zerg attack going down. I would like to see slightly more upgrades, but that's just because that's my style. We see this Phoenix and this Void Ray hunting Overlords right now. If you see this much invested in base defense, that's probably a good decision. Just kill Overlords, be as annoying as possible. It doesn't mean that these can't go to good use, but it does mean that you shouldn't attack mineral lines, because it's a bad investment. We see some Zerglings coming in, trying to counterattack the third. We also see burrowed roaches, but these cannons are going to completely detect them. However, this does mean that they could catch these guys unawares. These guys, of course, being 2 sentries, a zealot, and about 1 billion stalkers. Sounds like a reality show. 2 sentries, a zealot, 4 stalkers. Can they beat the roaches? We see this Void Ray coming in. So far has 2 kills. Let's see if has his Phoenix friend survived. Indeed, the Phoenix friend has. The Void Ray does barely make it out. Too bad that he doesn't have SCVs to repair it. These roaches, I don't know if they are quite cost effective. Can Phoenixes lift from burrowed state? I kind of want to see them. We see Blink coming out, as well as Psionic Storm. An interesting choice. Looks like we're going to be seeing Stargate Gateway tech instead of transitioning into a Colossus base. These roaches here could be useful for scouting, but at the same time they're sort of immobile at this point. And he looks like he's just going to be trying to escape with them. Meanwhile, back in Zerg's base, he's not yet taken his third. He's not yet breaking down the rocks to take his fourth, pardon me. Not the third and the fourth. He has his third. Zerg is also making a Spire, very Korean, very modern style, to instead of going for this big, heavy army, to instead focus on a lot of counterattacks and a lot of harassment, which is generally the way one would work versus Terran. However, this is showing more and more success versus Zerg, or versus Protoss, pardon, because Protosses aren't used to this. They aren't used to this counter-attacking, harassment-oriented style. They're instead used to big, scary army style. And so then, when you have this mobile force that you can't quite catch and thus can't quite kill, it's very difficult for Protoss players, especially ones that aren't on the Korean ladder, to deal with. We see a lot of Stalkers dying and some great Roach micro. Meanwhile, back in Zerg space, he's droning and getting +1 Carapace as well as +1 Zergling attack. I don't know how much I like this transition, but so far it's been showing a lot of success on the Korean ladder, and thus it's okay. Making an Archon probably the most overpowered unit versus Zerg in the world. Just kidding. Although, look at this. 39 damage versus biological. Guess what? Things are biological. All Zerg units, yay! Armored biological. Biological psionic. Armored biological. All of them are biologicals. So thus this Archon's going to be incredibly valuable. But yet, strangely, we see Archon, Zealot, Templar, Sentry more versus Zerg. No, more versus Terran than we do Zerg. Pardon me, my brain just sort of stopped there for a moment. We see now the Zerg is expanding again, as well as taking this. A smart move to try to, perhaps the Protoss will assume that his only base is over there, allowing him to keep this base, or perhaps the Protoss will scout this base, start to attack it, and this base over here will go unnoticed. It's a nice little feint, and it's, at this point in the game, when you already have 3 bases up, economically viable. We see the Protoss producing Roaches, Overseers, which I like, because it could mean he could come in here and he could gack up this, or perhaps gack up these. We see that one of the gateways has not yet been merged into a warp gate, but there it goes. We see he's using a warp prism to move down to the low ground and make a 4th base. Meanwhile, the creep spread of the Zerg is not great. We are not looking at the best creep spread like we were in the semifinals of the good old-fashioned Nasal. Instead, we're seeing just moderately good creep spread, but he does have a lot of tumors out, and that's always a good thing. The Overlord spread of the Zerg, however, is good. And we see now that the Void Ray is taking out the Overlord. Now, the immediate concern, if I'm Protoss, is the fact that right now I don't have a very scary ball. Right now, I have a very good situational cute army that if I land a lot of, say, Psionic Storms on these Roaches, it's very strong, but I don't yet have something that's scary to engage head-on for most units. Like, a bunch of Zealots could, or pardon me, a bunch of Zerglings could come in here and do quite a bit of damage. Even with Psionic Storm, even with Archons, Zerglings are still pretty good units. But instead we see Zerg doing something extremely Korean, going for Banelings. Koreans generally use Banelings as a late game unit against Protoss because they like to drop them on top of the Protoss army and Overlords.